Hello again, and welcome to another episode of That CBD Girl podcast. I am your host, That CBD Girl, Carly, and this is another episode brought to you by Quartz Trading Co, where you can find natural remedies for common problems. As a courtesy reminder, please remember that the FDA does not test or approve CBD for medical use, and the statements made on this podcast are not intended to treat, cure, or diagnose any illness or disease. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some conditions CBD is helping with, and we have guest speaker Cara Johnson, which is a chronic CBD mom on Instagram. She's here to tell her story firsthand about CBD and how it's changed her life. So welcome, Cara. How are you doing?
Pretty good today, thank you.
Good. So me and Cara, we actually met through the CBD industry. She was a customer of mine and messaged me looking for some of our CBD products to get her started. And we'll just go down a brief list of the conditions that Cara has. And so briefly here, we have the lumbar scoliosis with S-curve 26, disc degenerative disease, pinched nerves, sciatica, facet arthritis, loss of padding in the L4 and L6, carpal tunnel, which she's had surgery on, tendinitis, arthritis in the hands, severe secondary fibromyalgia, spinal stenosis, and POTS, which is post-orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a broken nerve in the brain, right?
That affects your heart rate to an extent. You also probably have a low blood volume, so you're more affected when you donate blood or when you have to get labs done and things.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, and then essentially painsomnia from all of these conditions keeping you up at night.
Yeah, and waking me up at about 3 o'clock every morning.
Right. Rough. So, how old were you when you first were diagnosed with the first illness?
Well, when you line up in junior high and they check everybody for scoliosis when you're about 13, that's when I was first told that I need to go to the doctor because my back wasn't looking correct. And so at 13 I was diagnosed with scoliosis, and they put me in a brace by the time I was 15, but I wouldn't wear it. And that was kind of the first thing that I did wrong. My younger self was not wearing my scoliosis brace because my back was surgical by the time I was 20, 21, but they didn't want to do surgery because I was so young, and back surgery is invasive. And when you have scoliosis, your muscles and your bones in your body, they settle and they get used to a certain way of being. And where my scoliosis is at, I wasn't affected with walking or reaching or using my arms and legs, and so because of that, they didn't have a reason to do surgery. My back got really bad by the time I was in my 30s, and that's when, by the time I was 34, 35, I was having chronic pain throughout my body and headaches and all kinds of issues. And that's when we found out there was pinched nerves in my neck that were probably a result of my settling body from scoliosis and it being stressed throughout my life and not being really properly taken care of, because I was very into hiking and camping and snowboarding and skateboarding and just playing basketball and volleyball and just always going and doing with my friends every weekend punk rock shows, and it was really hard on my body throughout my life. So my actual diagnosis of fibromyalgia came at 35, and I'm 40 now, so it was about 5 years ago.
So would you say that's when your life started to change?
That's when I realized, I really had to make some changes day to day to be able to live with my body. And I still was working full-time teaching in the public schools until 2.5 years ago. So I made it about 3 years working with chronic pain and fibromyalgia and a bad back and all that fun stuff.
Now, have they told you, like, the fibro, that maybe it was a result of not taking care of the spine growing up?
Yeah, my rheumatologist specifically said that people that have like an underlying condition, there's two types of fibromyalgia. There's primary and secondary. And primary is usually a result of like a severe trauma that's happened and your body and your brain can't recover, because fibromyalgia is mostly a broken brain before it's anything. It's how the pain signals reach your brain and your nervous system is going haywire because it's sending messages to your brain that are like, hey, fight or flight, like you're in pain, you're hurting everywhere, this is happening. and it's really from lack of sleep. And so sometimes people have a depression or a trauma that like affects them, and then they can't sleep well. PTSD, sexual assault, things like that. And then they'll wake up years later and they have chronic pain, and it's because they haven't been sleeping good for years. And he says that I have secondary, which is like an underlying actual pain condition, and I didn't get good sleep throughout my life, and I was always go, go, go. Yes. And I was hard on my body, and so your brain gets tired of pushing through that pain. And at some point, something bad happened to me, and I told him, yes, that was infertility. It kind of completely broke me to this depression that I had to get out of. And once that happened, I had dealt with a bad back and a bad neck and headaches and everything, but I had never dealt with chronic fatigue and pain and fibromyalgia until that infertility depression hit me. And that's when I really started to wake up every day in pain and had to get right in my own head with it to be able to get better.
Yeah. And I just want to add too, since we're going to be focusing on the conditions that you have and how it's affected your life, it may not be the case for everybody else. And I just want to add here that there are other ways that people can get these conditions. And some of those ways are through environmental and food toxins. Yes. So a lot of things that we're breathing in the air and the food that we're consuming, they have toxins that lead to inflammation in our bodies, which lead to these conditions. So
the doctors will never admit that to you.
Yeah.
But I agree, and I know that a lot of the medications that I was put on for my bad back and depression at the age of 15 to 25 definitely messed up my stomach now in adulthood. It definitely made me have a lot of these issues that I have when taking any kind of medication now. My body will not tolerate pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, that makes sense. And even chronic inflammation, I've been reading that it leads to heart diseases and other autoimmune disorders. So it's like a snowball effect, essentially, when things starts to happen.
I've been taking CBD for so long at a high volume that even when I tried to cut my CBD out for 3.5 weeks and then take labs, my lupus markers are there, but they're not high enough in a certain tier. And the doctor told me that it's because I've been using CBD and it's good with inflammation and it lowers it so much in the blood that it actually will affect some blood panels for certain autoimmune diseases. And that it's basically like you're sick, you have it. You're not sick enough for us to diagnose you yet because something in your body is helping you fight it. And I'm like, yeah, so that'd be the CBD.
The CBD is working too good.
Pretty much for me to get an actual diagnosis on lupus. But
yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people are using it for a lot of these conditions because they are a result of inflammation. And since CBD has those anti-inflammatory benefits, it is helping so many, including yourself.
And his last thing said to me was, you know what works for your body, do that. Yeah. Because I'm not going to offer you anything you're going to take anymore anyways, right? And he's right.
Yeah, definitely. And just for some other conditions that you don't have that CBD can help for, I just want to list off here too. It can help skin conditions, which ranges from eczema to dermatitis to psoriasis. And it even can help kids that have these conditions, and it's helpful for the elderly. They can use it for their pain, dementia, Alzheimer's, and animals, dogs and cats, epilepsy. I think one thing that we already touched base on is the fog. That's one thing that CBD, you've said, Cara, has helped you with, right?
Yeah, and especially the full spectrum.
Yeah.
Like, and recently it's been insane, the fibromyalgia fog and just the chronic fatigue fog that my brain's been in. And with the full spectrum cap in the morning, I really feel like a bit like my old self, which is amazing.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're saying it helps prevent and slow down the process of Alzheimer's too. Because CBD can interact with your CB1 receptor, which is mostly in your central nervous system. And that clears up the fog that's there that causes the Alzheimer's or the fibro fog. So yeah, I just wanted to mention those other conditions too. Let's talk some more about when you started using CBD. How old were you when you first heard of CBD?
Well, so it's 2019 now and I'm 40. So it was 2014 at HempFest in San Jose area that I first heard about CBD, but I didn't understand what it was, and there was just a few vendors. There was a lot of vendors at HempFest, but there was only a few talking about CBD. And they were mostly talking about dabbing in general with concentrates, because that's kind of when that came out and when I had my first dab too. But leaving that event, I remember wondering more about CBD. Then in 2015, 16 is when we started to really go to Highway 99 in Bakersfield, and also we would go to Emerald City Remedies in Oildale, and we saw CBD products because vendors would set up there.
Right.
And that's when you started setting up. And I know that I tried a few different things before Quartz Trading Company's bath bombs, but they were one of the first that really helped me with my all-over joint pain at night before bed. And then I'd also use those Pure Ratios patches a lot.
Oh, yeah, those are nice.
Because Emerald City Remedies had a great deal on them, and he was just so kind to help patients, I believe, is why he was able to sell them to me so cheap.
Yeah. So did you know at first that it came from both cannabis, as in the marijuana plant and the hemp plant, or were you just thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Because when I was a medical patient, I grew and I had a few accidental hemp plants, and so I started to kind of Google into what that all was and if they were even useful. And at that time, I was aware that, pretty much since high school, I've been aware of hemp paper and string and all that kind of idea, but I didn't know that we had CBD receptors in in your body until probably the end of 2016.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
when I fully understood.
I was just reading that they first discovered that in the early 90s, the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah, see, that's crazy to me, because I like to
me
think
too.
I'm a very educated person.
I probably didn't hear about CBD myself until about 2012, 2011. So for that to have been around for the previous 20 years and us not even hear about it, that's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. And during this whole time, since 2014, honestly, most of my life, but let's say when my chronic pain got really bad, during that whole time, I was on a lot of big pharma prescription medications too to try to manage my pain. Yeah,
what medicines were you taking? And
so the things that I was taking prior to 2015, gabapentin is it's similar to Lyrica. It's kind of like its cousin, and it's a anti-seizure nerve medication that's given to a lot of people with fibromyalgia and chronic pain. And then pre-gabapentin. Once gabapentin wasn't working and the doctor increases your dose, they say, hey, you need to try this new one. It's called Lyrica, and it's pre-gabapentin. I was on that for 2 years. I also had prescriptions for Norco, Vicodin, Celexa was one that we tried, Wellbutrin for depression and things that happen with chronic pain. Tizanidine is a muscle relaxer. Flexerol is a muscle relaxer for the pinched nerves in my neck. Both muscle relaxers, I didn't take at the same time, but they would flip me. They'd keep me on one for 3 to 6 months, and then they change me to the other. And it was because I'd have this tachycardia, rapid heartbeat. I felt like my heart was beating out my chest. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with issues. I was also on naproxen, and then I'd get the shot. I can't remember what the name of it is. It's very basic, but it's because I'm fogging on it right now. Everybody that's listening,
like a cortisone?
Yeah, it's like a Toradol shot.
Cortisone shot?
Anti-inflammation, right?
Yeah. Which those help, but are usually only temporary.
They're temporary. They help so much, to the point where I would say, hey, can I have 3 a week, please? And the doctor laughed at me and they said, oh, honey, it's very hard on your liver.
Yes.
Well,
they pump athletes with that, too.
Well, they wouldn't let me. My insurance, I have really good insurance, and they will only let me get one every 6 months. And so I do feel like I haven't had one in about a year, but I do feel like once in a while, man, I really want one because it's super helpful.
So that's a long list of medicines.
Yeah.
So one thing I touched on in the last podcast was how the pharmaceutical medicine works in comparison to how CBD works. And this is a really good example because a lot of these medicines that you